Muriel and the Good Eats. The middle years had not been kind to Muriel Tweedsmuir. Her love of fine food had ultimately been her undoing. Her job at the Daily Factor as food critic had left her with an insatiable craving for exotic fare, and when the tabloid folded, so in fact did Muriel. Days of dining and critiquing for the morning paper had come to an end. Not one to make friends easily, and known to be very sharp of tongue, she had no contacts to speak of. She was no longer able to make a living as adjudicator of gastronomic edibles, and being too overbearing for the foodie shows on television, although word had it that she had auditioned several times, her repugnant articule, as the French would say, when angered, was a definite impediment. Thus, she resigned herself to living off the sale of her extraordinary Biedermeier and exquisite table linens, which had enjoyed impeccable and loving care in her family for generations. Not being a meat and two veg gal, however, and given her constant craving for the finer delicacies of life's palate, Muriel soon found that her monies had run out. Going on the dole was a necessity, and she moved into an efficiency council flat in the SW9. It was an insufferable humiliation, more so because she could not free herself of the scintillating aromatic memories that at one time welcomed her daily arrival at the finest eateries in London town. Just thinking of a fabulous grand mushroom fouillette plated with a finely seasoned steak tartare would render Muriel faint of heart. Attired in her Sunday best, the buttoned-down black-gray dress with jacket and veiled pillbox hat, Muriel would spend a noon hour at Jared's. It was one of her favorite food emporiums and her most cherished once-a-week venture. Wednesday was Taste and Sample Day, when Muriel would help herself to a large plateful of fougasse, leaf-shaped bread with parsley and sea salt. Just browsing, dear, thanks ever so, and under her breath an almost inaudible "bugger off" to the clerk who had addressed her. After one particular Wednesday afternoon at Jared's, she decided not to go right home. It was a balmy July afternoon, and she did not want to suffer the noisy doings around her council flat. She took the underground tube to Archway Station, catching the bus that would take her to Waterdown Park. The country-like surroundings were beautiful at that time of year. Muriel strolled about Swain's Lane, adjacent to the Highgate Cemetery, reaching into her faux leather-stenciled alligator bag for some bits of delicious fougasse that she had, with almost sleight of hand, spirited away into the plastic bag lining the inside of her Italian satchel. The motorcade that approached the cemetery was most impressive. Sleek black limousines, 10 in all, trailed after a massive flower-topped hearse. Elegant automobiles followed, and one by one, beautifully dressed men and women stepped out into the pathway, slowly following the lead of the procession. Muriel, appropriately dressed for the occasion, the Jared's taste and sample outfit, took it upon herself to follow at a respectful distance. By the time she reached the burial site at the top of the hill, Muriel was out of breath. She leaned lightly on an ornamental gravestone for support. She had not expected the climb to be so tiresome and hard on her legs. Just as the ceremony was ending, a smartly dressed gentleman suddenly approached her. "Stanco, gadare, cara signora. Se non si dispone di trasporto, posso offrirle un viaggio alla reception." Muriel could only make out 4 words. Transporto, offrirvi alla and la reception. She gingerly touched her pillbox hat and, lowering the tulle veil, nodded in the affirmative. Her light and constant sobs, while holding a lacy handkerchief to her nose, dampened any attempts at conversation that may have been deemed appropriate during the automobile ride to the Mayfair district. Besides, Muriel couldn't speak Italian, didn't know the deceased, and did not want to be involved in a verbal exchange in any language, and more importantly, it was almost tea time and she was hungry. And there, in a great hall awaiting Muriel, was a wondrous spread of magnificent food presented in such a spectacular fashion that it took her breath away. There were trays of prosciutto, thinly sliced and slow roasted with provolone, charcoal grilled red peppers with a spicy balsamic reduction, manzo rastao, a spiced roast beef stacked with cheddar, oven-baked onion and horseradish mayo, and pollo grigiolo, a flamed grilled chicken topped with fire blackened red pepper, provolone, and delightful chipotle sauce. all displayed on at least 10 tables of food and wafting miraculous aromas from their open tureens. Muriel didn't speak to anyone, and no one spoke to her. She left the hall sated, walked down the cobblestone laneway, and looked for the first convenient bus that would take her to the underground and back to SW9. The next morning, Muriel awoke with a flash, an idea that was manna from heaven, as it were. The London Times, the Telegraph, the Guardian, and the Evening Standard all had important roles to play. And so began Muriel's daily trips to the newspaper kiosk, wire-framed buggy wagon clanking noisily behind her. Not just one newspaper did she buy, mind you, but a dozen or so, each with tidy obituary columns. And why bother with just cemetery rituals? If an address was printed for a reception with the given time thereof, Muriel would skip the burial altogether. Saturday's papers were the best. Notices for the following 7 days would appear. Week after week, her agended date book would fill up in a menu-like fashion. Greek, Italian, Spanish, French. She would arrive a quarter of an hour earlier at the event address and wait a bit, keeping a small distance away from the reception doors or gates. She would then position and pace her entrance to coincide with an approaching group of guests. Her black dress, pillbox hat, and lowered veil blended in beautifully with each newly found entourage. And there were not only funeral receptions to partake in. Social columns offered other delicious enticements. At an 80th birthday reception for Benekiet Kukarski in the vestibule of the Lady Szczęściowa Catholic Polish Church, Muriel sampled naleśniki, pancakes with coddled sweet cream, bigos, cabbage stew with robust meat, sausages, and mushrooms, and flaky and plaky tripe and potato pancakes served with spice applesauce. Madame Lefebvre's fundraiser for the orphans of Calais offered equally delicious fare. Flaky pissoladiere, warmed flatbread with caramelized onion, and beautifully shaped rillettes, coarsely shredded duck and pork pâté on a toasted sourdough bread, shallots, and cornichons. And how would Muriel not attend the afternoon garden party held by Adelpha Diodorus, in honor of her own daughter's fifth born, on the lawns of the Greek Orthodox Church of St. Lazarus and St. Andrew in the Forest Gate? Muriel wore her champagne-colored pillbox and off-white gold-buttoned double-breasted suit, lifting the hat's veil to indulge in a wonderful tara masaletta, a blend of whipped bread, olive oil, lemon juice, and imported black caviar, and a superb tirocafetiere, feta cheese, mezzitra, and ricotta blended with peppers, spices, and olives. A fabulous summer of feasting went by quickly. It was in late September, however, on a particularly dark and cloud-heavy day, that Muriel was about to experience her downfall. She had been anticipating a particular food event for weeks now, and had even tried to eat a little less the week before so that she could indulge herself in this particular occasion. Once a year, around the start of autumn, when the month of fasting or Ramadan ends, there is no house in Turkey that does not serve a variety of sweet delicacies in accordance with the ritual holiday of Sika Bayrami. And so it was at the Turkish embassy in London. Muriel boarded the Knightsbridge bus, and within a half-hour period was feasting on superlative sweets and the most incredible lightness of texture. Suddenly, a piece of tulumba, cylinders of soft pastry soaked in sugary syrup, that had found its way to the polished floor, caught Muriel's right shoe at the most unexpected moment, causing her to backward somersault in an arse-over-tit fashion and slide feet first under a table of fern sutlak, a baked milk and rice pudding of mild yellow color, with a crusty top mottled with brown spots where the baking has lightly burned it. Muriel winced in pain as she was lifted off the wheeled stretcher that had carried her through the old corridors of the Royal London Hospital and hoisted onto a hospital bed. Much later, she was awakened from surgery by her council flat solicitor, advising her that there would be no lawsuit, but that a small settlement would be bestowed on her, even though she had been trespassing. The Turkish embassy, finishing up with Ramadan, felt that a sum should be offered, enough to cover what the National Health would not. Muriel's left leg, cumbersomely fitted with a cast that ran the length from hip to toe, was suspended 1.5 feet in the air. In a fortnight, he told her, she would be fitted with a walking cast and then released from hospital. A forlorn-looking candy striper arrived with breakfast, boiled oats, mashed banana, and prune, all in one bowl. Muriel glumly chewed on a squashed prune, and she listened half-heartedly to the solicitor's drone. My dear Miss Tweedsmuir, when we are involved with a willful act or act of negligence as distinguished from a mere omission of a duty that causes an injury to or invasion of the person's rights or especially property of another, or if you would, he continued, to enter wrongfully or without proper authority upon the real property of another. My tea is getting cold and I hate bloody prune, Muriel mumbled. It was 1 month later, with walking cast removed, that Muriel ventured back out into the world of fashionable edibles. A little shop in Kensington had advertised a first-come, first-served taste of a boulette d'Avensin, a very strong and spicy French cheese, paired with a 6-ounce glass of robust, dark German beer. Muriel was first in line, having set her alarm an extra hour earlier that morning. Muriel? Muriel Tweedsmuir? Bullocks, cursed Muriel, as she heard her name being called out a third time. From somewhere behind her in the curving line up to the shop doors, she lowered her sunglasses. With a slight turn of her neck, she looked back and recognized the caller. It was that busybody, Lucy Huff, who wrote that insipid Home and Hearth column at the now defunct Daily Factor. Lucy maneuvered her way up to the front of the queue to where Muriel was standing, collar up, neck receding turtle-like into her linen jacket. Why, Muriel, it is you! Where on earth have you been keeping yourself? Do you know that half of the Food for Life network has been looking for you? What on earth are you talking about, woman? Muriel said, lowering her dark glasses at the tip of her nose and peering over them. Why, the show. The show, of course. You auditioned for a show months ago, but now there's a new show that will be going into production. Hellion in the Kitchen. The producers have been looking for you everywhere. There are 4 of us, food adjudicators, and we judge meals prepared by young chefs. You would be the counterpart to, well, what's his name on that other show? Yeah, you know the one with the bad manners who swears at everyone. Jordan Tansey, Muriel. Where have you been? Muriel was tempted to shout out, quit your squawking, you dumb nut. But she decided to hold her tongue and think pleasant thoughts. Filet of sole sautéed with almonds, mussels cooked in white wine and garlic puree, perhaps a grilled tiger shrimp or 2. After all, if what Lucy had just told her was in fact true, she might be eating happily ever after again. Darling, Muriel purred, in the sweetest voice she could conjure up. How have you been, dear heart?